CBS 21 News begins with breaking news.
And this is breaking news we just learned within the last couple hours. It is the details of the mass shooting that happened at a York County hospital a couple months ago, where Officer Andrew Duarte lost his life. We're hearing that he was killed by friendly fire. We're getting details about what that really means. We'll be talking about all that, reaction, and also talking to a security expert to try to get a better feel for how this all happened just a couple months ago. Thanks for being here. I'm Joel D. Smith. Once again, this is a shooting that happened at UPMC Memorial in York County on February 22nd. It was a dangerous situation. It was a heroic situation. And we've been talking about Andrew Duarte, that officer who laid his life on the line for a couple months now. But now we're getting the details more about what really happened there. Part of that is hearing the response from the chief here in West York. We just talked to him just a few moments ago. Here's part of his reaction.
At that exact moment in time, there was no more dangerous place on earth than in the hallway of that hospital. The only space officers had to think was between the bullets. Having said that, one of the rounds hit the suspect. It was directed and targeted towards that threat, but it also went on to hit Officer Duarte and another officer.
Those are the stats. They said that they shot more than 20 times. Their reasoning for shooting was to get the threat taken care of and save the hostage. The hostage wasn't hit at all, but as you heard, one of those bullets went to the side and did hit Andrew Duarte, eventually killing him. When I revealed this information to some of the folks in this West York community, here was their reaction. But we also did hear that Duarte happened to be hit by friendly fire, and that's how he died.
Oh. Well, didn't hear that one, but I mean, it is what it is. I mean, it sucks to say that, but I mean, there's nothing that you can really do about that.
Oh, wow. Yeah, this is the first I'm hearing about that. That's a shame.
The way he saved the hospital was inspirational, and it was heroic, and he always will be remembered for that.
And that is for sure. We have so many angles of this covered by our team that's been doing a great job the past few months, and especially today. We have Candace Scalise, we have Andrew Klein, and we have TJ Anthony. We're going to start with TJ, getting us more up to date on exactly what we learned today. Take it away, TJ.
Hey, Joel D. So we truly did learn a lot of new information at that press conference that happened earlier today, including the fact that the suspect did have a loved one who was being treated at the UPMC Memorial Hospital. And we also know that the suspect unfortunately died the day before that shooting happened. Now, the DA didn't go into specifics about what that person was being treated for, but we do know that their condition just kept getting worse and worse. Now, just the unfortunate tragedy behind what happened to Andrew Duarte really was just an outcome so many did not want to be true.
At a time when everyone was trying to heal, we had to go in and ask questions.
After a little over 2 months of waiting, the York County DA Tim Barker finally released how West York Borough police officer Andrew Duarte was killed while responding to a hostage situation at UPMC Memorial Hospital in York County. Officers went in there to save lives. Mistakenly, a life of one of their own was lost.
The actor, while holding the healthcare worker hostage at gunpoint, exited the main door of the ICU. Officers from both sides of the doorway begin to fire. 2 shots strike Officer Duarte. 1 shot strikes him in the left arm and goes across his chest. The other strikes him at the left side chest area.
Those words, hard to digest. Several agencies rushed to the scene to save hostages police say were held by this man, Diogenes Archangel Ortiz. Ortiz walked into the hospital with a handgun and zip ties back in February. The moment leading up to the shootout, the DA says officers didn't know the suspect's gun had no ammo. The DA's findings revealed Ortiz's significant other was being treated at the hospital and later died. The DA went on to say there really weren't signs he would do this.
He remained at the hospital, came in daily, and while he was there, he was sad and solemn, but was also polite. He was described as being nice, almost too nice.
The DA says Ortiz was hit 15 to 20 times. His hostage was not touched by police bullets. But while Officer Duarte was killed in the chaos, his legacy will continue to live on.
I'm proud that he was a man who would run into danger.
At that press conference, I mean, hearts were still heavy. People are still trying to come to terms with, just the fact that their loved one passed away. But the DA also did say that there were no signs a suspect would carry out such an event like what took place in February. Joel D.
It almost sounds like he snapped, but then again, that day was very premeditated. One of the details that was in there was pretending, it seems, to feel sick after hearing the details of his lost loved one. He was given space, they were saying, to get a hold of himself because he was so emotional, and that is when apparently he got that weapon and came back out. That was one of the surprises I heard. Any other surprises that come to mind, something that wasn't in your report just now?
Well, what's really interesting is just how detailed this investigation was. I mean, they've been looking into this case for a while now, for weeks even, and the DA did talk about how they even looked at surveillance video from Walmart and saw, the fact that the suspect bought zip ties. And they also said, which was interesting, that the gunman had a gun, and that gun he actually wasn't allowed to even have because of an incident that happened before this incident, which took place in February. So as you could just tell, they took a lot of time really investigating the details there, Joel D.
He had some sort of incident from the 90s, wasn't supposed to have a gun. This was a stolen gun from 2017, Manor Township, Lancaster County. That part, we don't know how he got the weapon. So a lot of details, still a few loose ends. We'll be following it all. Thank you very much, TJ Anthony, for that. And like we said, we've been following this for a while, right? Let's take a look back and see how we got here. So many lives in this community have been changed forever. Jasmine Brooks now joins us with a timeline of so many things that happened between that fateful day and now.
Saturday, February 22nd, 10:45 a.m. A gunman enters UPMC Memorial Hospital in York County with a bag, including a handgun and zip ties, and heads straight to the ICU, where he holds several staff members hostage. He opens fire, striking 3 hospital workers, a doctor, a nurse, and a custodian. A 4th was injured from falling. UPMC officers immediately respond to the hostage situation, and the gunman opens fire on them. Shortly after 11 a.m., WellSpan York Hospital clinical teams are notified of an active shooter situation with injuries at a nearby hospital. Meanwhile, officers from surrounding departments are called to the scene. That's when the suspect brings out a staff member into the hallway. Her hands are zip-tied behind her back as he's holding a gun to her head. The officers open fire, shooting and killing the gunman.
It is absolutely clear and beyond any and all doubt that the officers were justified in taking their action and using deadly force.
During the hostage situation, 3 officers are struck by gunfire. By 12 p.m., the first patient arrives from this incident for treatment at the hospital, and emergency teams evaluate a total of 4. 12:19 p.m. Officer Duarte dies in WellSpan York Hospital as a result from his injuries. The coroner later releases his cause of death to be ballistic injuries to the torso. Officer Duarte paid the ultimate sacrifice just 5 days after his 30th birthday. Around 12:45 p.m., UPMC releases a statement to the public saying it was aware of the shooting and that the gunman is dead. 1:10 p.m., Governor Josh Shapiro says he's been briefed on the situation and is heading to the scene. 4 p.m., Governor Shapiro joins officials, including York County District Attorney Tim Barker, to address the public in a live press conference.
Here in York County today, we saw the very best and the very worst of humanity.
My heart, along with everybody else in York County, breaks.
7 p.m., a memorial begins outside the West York Borough Police Department, where the community honors Officer Andrew Duarte.
So unfortunately, he didn't make it home today, but could have been any of us, and I'll kick myself for the rest of my life. I got off at 3:30 this morning, and why wasn't it me? Why couldn't I have been the one to not come home? He should have made it home. And I think every officer in the surrounding area is going to be thinking that, why wasn't it me? Why was it him? But all we can say is thank you.
Makes you wonder what that officer who was out of York is thinking tonight. I interviewed him right out here just a couple hours after that mass shooting, and you heard how he felt, how the entire law enforcement community felt about this, like they all lost one of their own. Someone who really did is a family member, the mother who we got used to hearing from in the days and weeks after this shooting, and we wanted to hear more about that right now from her.
I wish I could ask him how he felt in that moment, but I can't. But I know that was what he would want to do. That's what policing he would want to do.
We're told that yesterday the York County DA sat down with Andrew's mother, Nancy, telling her exactly how her son was killed and what happened with the friendly fire and all the details that we're learning today. So apparently she learned about this yesterday. The rest of us learned about it today. Let's bring in CBS 21's Candace Scalise, who's built a relationship with Nancy, the mother of Andrew Duarte, and got a chance to talk to her right after this news conference. Candace, what are the big takeaways here?
Well, you know, Joel D., I think the DA said it best, that Nancy is one of the strongest women that he's ever met. And when you tell her that, she says, you know, I don't feel strong. I cry in my car. I hold his shirt and I smell it every day because I miss him. I want to remember what he smells like. She says that learning how he died by friendly fire does not change how she feels about this investigation, because she knows he went into that hospital right behind me the day that hostage situation occurred, and he was ready to serve the people, and he was ready bluntly to die for the people there, to save their lives. And that's exactly what happened. Something that I think was shocking for her is that she told me she had put on one of his bulletproof vests before just to see how heavy it was, how it fit. And she said, of course, he was wearing it that day. But what we learned in that press conference earlier, just a few hours ago, was that the bullet that killed him actually went through a mesh part of that bulletproof vest. And so for her, it provides a little bit of closure, knowing that the investigation has concluded and now she can move forward, focusing on memorials. She is calling May Memorial May, focusing on remembering her son and keeping his memory alive, Joel D.
Yeah, you can do everything right, and sometimes the situation still doesn't turn out the exact way you want. Thanks for sharing some more of those moments that you had with Officer Duarte's mother. Thank you. And folks, we have more coverage coming your way. We're going to bring in Mike Regan. He has some tactical experience in the past, so we want to hear more about what he has to say about this coming up. Welcome back to our live coverage. We are getting into the details of what happened during the mass shooting at the hospital a few months ago, where Officer Andrew Duarte lost his life. This is the West York Borough Police Department, where he came to work every day and where they're remembering him in so many ways. And actually coming up on Saturday, the West York Borough Police Department planting a tree in honor of Officer Duarte. They just did this, and the brothers in blue say that they planted this to celebrate Officer Duarte's life and to make sure that he is never, ever forgotten. West York officers tell us more projects to honor the officer will be happening in the next few months as well, so stay tuned for that kind of information as well. And you know, a lot of people, you might be out there thinking, I was wondering how I can help out and donate. Well, you can. You can go online to the York County Safety Collab website, the York County Safety Collab website, or you can also send a check to the West York Borough Police Department. So many ways to help.
All the healthcare workers, and of course all the police officers, all those members of law enforcement. They are heroes.
There were a lot of heroes that day, and we want to talk more about what really happened in detail. So for that, we're bringing in Mike Regan. He was a former state senator. This was part of his coverage area. You represented these people. And of course, you do have a history with the U.S. Marshals Fugitive Task Force, so you understand these situations as well. When you listen to what we heard, the details of that day, and unfortunately hearing that it was a friendly fire situation, what's your first takeaway?
First of all, it's the sum of all fears for any police officer, any police department, for something like this to happen. It's terrible, absolutely terrible. But the one thing I think it's important to remember that this situation was created by the perpetrator, right? These police officers ran into a building not knowing what they were going to see. Very chaotic situation, which is consistent with when these things happen. You know, very chaotic, things changing constantly. I think these police officers performed very well under these adverse circumstances, and unfortunately something bad happened during a very chaotic time.
Yeah.
But, you know, I can't say enough about their bravery.
The bravery is obviously unmatched, but we want to get into some of these details. As a layman, when I hear that they had both sides of this corridor right outside the ICU on both walls covered, and the person's coming through the middle, it almost seems inevitable that some of the shots are going to go across and then put some of the other people in danger. Is that how it sounds to you, who knows a little bit more about this?
Well, look, I think at first blush, maybe yes,
yeah.
But I think that, you know, we weren't there.
Yeah.
We didn't see what happened, and the way it was described can be different than the way it really was, so I'm not going to judge there. But I think that these guys were acting on changing information. They were positioning themselves in different spots, trying to get an advantage, and, you know, trying to do the right thing. Maybe sometimes things go wrong.
And it's got to talk about having a hostage in the situation. Yeah. Does that just change everything?
Oh, my God, everything. I mean, I can't imagine, based on what I heard today, anything that could go wrong was going wrong. Yeah. And it was just a horrible, high-tension situation that any officer wouldn't want to be there, number one, but you know, was under great pressure to perform, and I think they did pretty well.
We do know the unfortunate outcome with Officer Duarte getting hit by a bullet that came from one of the other officers there, but let's talk about the accuracy as well. They shot 22 times,
yeah.
Hit the suspect 15 times, didn't hit the hostage once.
Yeah, pretty incredible. Pretty incredible. I think probably that is outstanding. You know, it's just unfortunate the other thing happened, and it's just something you have to consider, you know, with all that was going on.
How difficult is it to work with different departments that you probably didn't train with? This was a mass response from different places, and yet they all had to work together at that moment.
Yeah, I mean, these guys, you imagine they ran into the building, and they were teaming up as they were approaching gunfire. You know, I've said this before to you, but running towards gunfire is counterintuitive, right? These guys were running towards gunfire. And I think the fact that they were, well, you know, they're trained pretty consistently. You know, I think they all go through the same basic training.
At one point, yes.
Yeah, basic training. But in a situation like that, you're counting on guys to step up and be leaders and come up with a plan on the fly, which is not always easy, but I think they did a pretty good job.
Last thing, it's got to feel terrible when you know that it was maybe your own gun that caused the death of one of your own. What's the kind of treatment and mental help that person you think will be getting in the future? Because it's just unthinkable, even though you know this is part of the game and part of how it goes sometimes. If it's not your fault.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing he needs to understand. I'm sure that officer feels horrible about this. And there'd probably be a lot of counseling and things that go into it. But the one thing that he needs to remember, that this was not his fault. This was the fault of the perpetrator and no one else's fault. He created that situation, and Officer Duarte lost his life, but it was not the police's fault.
Exactly. All right, well, thank you so much for your expertise in this and for stepping up and giving us some time today.
Sure, my pleasure. Thank you.
All right, that was Mike Regan, everybody. We're going to get back to the first moments this happened. One of the first reporters there on scene that day was Andrew Klein, and we're going to talk to him about some of his thoughts that day and what we've learned in just the last few hours as well. Andrew Klein coming your way next. So now it's been about 2 months since that deadly mass shooting at UPMC Memorial in York County, where Officer Andrew Duarte lost his life. Now we know in friendly fire. We've talked about that situation, how dangerous it was, how heroic that day was. But we want to go back to the very beginning where we didn't know hardly anything. Andrew Klein, one of our newest reporters, was the first on the scene that day. Andrew, take me back to that day. You're first told to go out there, kind of what you heard, what you saw.
Well, right, I woke up, it was a normal Saturday, and I looked at my phone and immediately saw a text that there was potential shooting and hostage situation. So I immediately came into work, got over to the hospital, and when I got to the hospital, there was this eerie feeling of, is this really happening? And then I pulled into where all the media was, all the way in the back, and you had to drive past this row of police cars sitting there, and that's when it really all started to hit me and feel real, that this situation that was, allegedly going on was really going on, and it was something that we were going to need to stay there all day for and continue to learn more and more details. But just that first day of driving up to the hospital and seeing that row of police cars lined up, knowing what could possibly be going on inside, it was unforgettable, truly.
And now we're getting the details of what was really happening in there that day. We got about 15 seconds left here, Andrew. What detail hit you the most? Because you knew what was happening outside, but not inside at that time.
Yeah, the idea of it being friendly fire certainly carries a lot of weight, and it's just one of those things that sat with me. And I just listened to Mike Regan speak about how that officer who fired that shot has to deal with that, and it makes that situation so much more real. And hearing about that and thinking about those different things that the officers are going to feel just makes it so much more emotional, and really does grip your soul.
Okay. Well, you did a great job then, and thanks for sharing some moments now with us, remembering that day. Andrew Klein. Now let's get to Candace Scalise.
Joel D, coming up, I sat down with Nancy Duarte, Andrew's mother, and she shares with us something that she found cleaning out Andrew's house that she wants you to know about, plus how she's reacting to all the information that we're learning today. That's coming up in a live report. Stay with us.
21 News begins with breaking news.
At that exact moment in time, there was no more dangerous place on earth than in the hallway of that hospital.
We are learning breaking news tonight. The shots that killed West York police officer Andrew Duarte during a UPMC hospital mass shooting came from another officer's gun. It's 6 o'clock. Thank you for joining us. I'm Jasmine Brooks. York County District Attorney Tim Barker says the shooter was shot by police 15 to 20 times, but 2 of the bullets fired hit Officer Duarte. And the district attorney also tells us that a lot more details are being revealed. What exactly happened that day at UPMC Memorial Hospital on February 22nd? Well, tonight we have team coverage bringing you the very latest. TJ Anthony breaking down that new information. Candace Scalise speaking to Duarte's mother to get her reaction to this new information. But first, we begin with Joel D. Smith, who is anchoring our team coverage from York County tonight.
Hey, Jasmine. Good evening, everybody. This is the West York Borough Police Department where Officer Andrew Duarte came so many times going to work. That one day he went to work and he ended up at the mass shooting at UPMC Memorial. And now we're learning more details about what he did that day, but also the suspect who was eventually shot and killed. As for that suspect, the gunman was apparently upset over a significant other who was in the hospital's ICU for a few days. What he did was he pulled out his weapon, forced a worker, one of those healthcare workers there in the ICU, to zip tie other workers, held people hostage. A nurse and a custodian were also shot. A doctor was grazed by a bullet. And Andrew Duarte, the officer, was among several who responded to this location, the calls of 911 to the hospital. Eventually, officers were able to get a clear shot at the gunman when he came out of the ICU into a hallway. They opened fire, and Duarte was caught in that crossfire. I talked to the police chief just a couple moments ago. His reaction to all this today.
In law enforcement, we like to have control of things, but one thing we always have to remember is the bad guy gets a vote. And in this case, he cast his vote by coming abruptly into that hallway as we were switching tactics and switching positions. And like I said, everybody did an outstanding job as far as the way that threat was mitigated that day.
And yet, even when you do everything right, these things can happen because it's not a perfect situation. We want to get more into the details of this. TJ Anthony listened to that news conference. It was very detailed. They went play by play. They went minute by minute. And here's TJ to break down some more of what we heard today. New things we learned. Even the police chief here said he didn't know all those details till today. TJ.
Yeah, Joel D. I mean, there was really just a lot of new information we learned today, but hearts were definitely heavy still during that press conference today as well. Now, we also learned today that the fact that the gunman, the suspected gunman, used a healthcare worker as a human shield around the same time Officer Duarte unfortunately lost his life. because of friendly fire. Now, I want to go ahead and talk about these breaking details more. So the DA also went on to tell us that the law enforcement did not know whether or not the gunman's gun was loaded or not. They did know he fired shots that day. Now, when the suspect was trying to move to a different part of the hospital and officers had eyes on him, that's when officers on opposite sides started firing off shots, not knowing the suspect's gun was out of ammo. The DA didn't say exactly who shot Duarte, but go ahead and take a listen to the York County DA explain just those pretty tense moments.
The actor, while holding the healthcare worker hostage at gunpoint, exited the main door of the ICU. Officers from both sides of the doorway begin to fire. 2 shots strike Officer Duarte. 1 shot strikes him in the left arm and goes across his chest. The other strikes him at the left side chest area.
And Joel, you kind of touched on this earlier before you tossed out to me the fact that this suspect had a loved one who was at that same hospital prior to the shooting that was being treated for something. Now, the DA did not say what they were being treated for, but we do know that that loved one did die before that shooting happened. Now, what's also interesting is that the DA said that there were no signs the suspect would carry out an event like what took place in February. But of course, Joel D, this is all just unfortunate, the fact that, an officer did lose his life. Reporting in York County, I'm TJ Anthony. Joel D, back to you.
Yeah, good work breaking down some of that stuff. I want to add in one more detail. They said that the hostage who he had at gunpoint, they actually pulled the trigger a few times and just didn't go off, either out of bullets or got jammed. Seems like it was out of bullets at that moment. Some amazing details from inside. The details we learned about Andrew Duarte's life, a lot of those came from his mother, who was so gracious with her time and sharing some of her emotional memories. As for the district attorney, he had something to say about her today.
And further, Officer Andrew Duarte, his family, and speaking with his mother, who I am going to tell you right now is one of the strongest, most wonderful people I've ever met in my entire life.
I think we would all agree with that as well, and especially Candace Scalise, who's had a chance to get to know Nancy, Officer Duarte's mother, over the past few months. And we want to get more on her reaction to hearing some of these new details that the rest of us just learned today. Candace.
Hey, Joel D. Yeah, I sat down with her today, and she tells me that the district attorney went to her house yesterday and told her everything that we learned today, walked step by step with her through what happened to her son. She said the most painful part of it was learning how Andrew died, not the fact that it was friendly gunfire, but the fact that the bullet went through the mesh in his bulletproof vest, and thinking of her son leaving the ICU and then going back to help officers who had been shot in the leg. She said this does give her a little bit of closure so that she can move forward, remembering Andrew and honoring him in memorials to come.
Do I have a shirt at home that I got out of his dresser that I smell every day? Yes, I do. I always said, I love you, and he said, I love you too.
Nancy Duarte Matarese rubbed her son's photo today, tucked inside a folder, as she talked about her only child being shot and killed.
I wish I could ask him how he felt in that moment, but I can't. But I know that was what he would want to do.
She says learning that he was killed by a fellow officer doesn't change how she feels about her son's death.
Andrew was called to this. There wasn't going to be something that I was going to say different to him.
Cleaning out Drew's house, Nancy found a letter he wrote on a notepad cover about being a police officer.
I am a warrior. I am part of a team. I will never quit. I will only accept victory. I will display professionalism at all times. I will conduct myself in a highly ethical manner. I am committed to excellence. I always seek to improve myself.
Nancy said the closure of the investigation allows her to move forward with memorials, honoring Drew and focusing on who he was.
He was a pilot. He had gotten his pilot's license when he was in Denver. And I'm sad I never got to fly with him. I loved being with him. I just loved being with him.
Nancy said that Andrew was her best friend. She called him Drew. She said he always beat her when they played cards together, and she was like, darn, that was so frustrating. Today, she just kept rubbing his photo when she was talking to us, and she really is a strong and incredible woman. Something else of note that I know that many people don't, just from texting with her and from speaking with her over the weekend before all of this happened today. Today, she closed on his house. Today was a closure and a chapter, not in this investigation, but she sold his house today. And so you can understand, if you're a parent, how difficult that must be, closing that chapter. And she said that's one of the most difficult parts about moving forward, is her heart breaks over and over again, because it just reinforces the fact that her son is no longer here earthside. But she says she knows she will see him in heaven. And she's asking all of you, if you can, to pray for her and all of our officers. Reporting live outside of the UPMC Memorial here at the York Hospital, I'm Candace Scalise. Back to you, Joel D.
Candace, thanks so much for your relationship with her and those amazing details that unfortunately makes our heart break even more, but also feel like we know him even more, and their relationship was just amazing. Thank you so much. Folks, you can learn more about that and so much more about this situation, what happened back then in February, and the details and the things we've learned since then. The funeral was gorgeous. We learned more about his life and so many awesome things about him as well. You can check that out at CBS21.com. And for new developments that come out, it's also the place to be.
All right, thanks, Joel D. Some great coverage there. Let's talk weather. A fantastic day, just incredible as we wrap up April. You know, April started off so chilly, and now it ends on a much warmer note. How about this? 77 right now in Harrisburg, 79 Philly, 80s in Baltimore. We hit 78 officially today so far, so very nice and warm. Real-time tracking shows a nice clear sky tonight, just a few high wispy clouds here or there, so we're going to keep it nice tonight. It will be on the cool side as we touch into the upper 40s. Let me show you what's on the way tomorrow. Nothing during the day, but as we get past dinner time, 6, 7 o'clock, we'll start to see some storms pop up. So a few storms tomorrow evening is what we're looking at, and then an unsettled pattern as we head into the weekend. In the meantime, take advantage of this evening. 9 o'clock tonight, we're clear, 58. Late tonight, clear skies, 54, and overnight lows will touch, as we mentioned, into the upper 40s. So really nice stuff. But as we head toward the weekend, the clouds are thickening up, and we have several chances for some rain. We'll show you that with the 7-day. That's coming up in just minutes. Jasmine, back to you.